Andrew Hutchison joins us today. He's the guy we go to when we talk Arkansas football, basketball, and baseball. And like me, Hutch, I think, is probably a baseball guy first. Is that fair to say?
I think that's very fair.
Yeah, I think that's why you and I get along so well, among other things. But anyway, we're going to talk Arkansas baseball, and there's a lot to talk about in a lot of directions. Hutch, of course, writes for bestofarkansassports.com. He's been in that market a while. Man, what a crazy weekend. I'm going to get to injuries in a minute, but I've been doing my own bracketology, and I was just listening to the guys at D1 Baseball, several of whom are my friends, and they were doing bracket predictions. And crazy as it sounds, I know it was a disastrous weekend for Arkansas, but Razorbacks still right there as a top 8 national seed, which is quite a testament to the season that Arkansas has had, because there have already been injuries. There have now been more injuries. We'll get to those in a minute, but it is crazy what Dave Van Horn has been able to cobble together out of adverse circumstances that started before the season even began, Hutch.
Yeah, Dave Van Horn has been phenomenal this year. I mean, it's if they can maintain a top 8 national seed and actually get one of those for the postseason, and make a run in the postseason, then I would have to say this is
Mm.
Dave Van Horn's best coaching job, and that's saying a lot for a guy that's been to the College World Series as much as he has. I think he's the active leader in College World Series appearances among head coaches. He did it twice at
Wow.
Nebraska, and I think 7 times at Arkansas. I lose count. All he lacks is that big trophy, but other than that, he's done everything else, and so it says a lot to say this would be his best coaching job. But everything they've encountered, both on the mound, in the lineup they used in Tuesday's loss against Missouri State was, it looked like a fall ball lineup because of all the backups they had in there, guys playing out of position. It was crazy, and the final score may not indicate it, but they almost won that game still against a decent Missouri State team. So Dave Van Horn has done a tremendous job this year.
Yeah, I think he's had to dip into AAA, maybe even AA, the last week or two. What's the body count these days? I mean, and here's the thing: like, if you're not a big Arkansas fan, you may not know all these names, but when we had this conversation pre-podcast and you're naming names, I'm like, I know every one of those guys. And I don't know Arkansas's roster like you do. I know the SEC teams pretty well. I can name most of the starters and that stuff. But it, to me, was notable when you start naming names, and I'm like, I know who every one of those guys are.
Yeah, I mean, on the mound, it started before the year, as you said earlier, with Jackson Wiggins going down with a torn UCL, needing Tommy John. He was the guy that was going to be their projected ace. I know he didn't put up huge numbers. Really, honestly, his numbers the last 2 years have not been good. But he looked like he was ready to take that next step. And there was a reason he was generating a lot of buzz, for the draft and everything. He looked like he had put it all together. You lose him before the year. Coty Frank, a transfer from Nebraska, a guy that started games for Nebraska in the Big Ten, been really productive there for a couple of years. Came here, looked like he was going to be your probably top middle reliever, a guy that can go multiple innings, multiple times a weekend. Going to be a key guy. He got a lot of use early in the year, and he somehow suffers a torn lat. Very unusual injury for a pitcher. That was back in, I want to say, March 1st, March 5th, something like that, early March. They've been out without him since then. Then you lose Brady Tygart right around that same time with a UCL strain. Good news is that seems to be on the return. We could talk about that here in a minute, but he should be coming back very soon. But you've been without him since then, so about a couple of months. Then offensively, you lose in the last just couple of weeks. You lose your 3-hole hitter, your probably top hitter, in my opinion, Jared Wegner, the transfer from Creighton. He still leads the team in home runs and RBIs. One of the top batting average guys. Really good OPS. Just a really, really solid player. He goes down with a broken thumb in a midweek game, sliding into third base. Freak injury. You lose most recently in the Georgia series this past weekend, Tavian Josenberger, your leadoff man, another one of your top bats. An emotional kind of leader, vocal leader for this Arkansas team, goes down with a hamstring injury, trying to avoid a tag, diving into first base, true hustle play. He goes down. There's no timeline for him to return yet. We don't know. They're trying to play it safe. So I mean, that's another big blow. And then a couple others, smaller names that people may not recognize. But I mean, Parker Rowlands, the starting catcher, went down with a back injury. Didn't play at all against Georgia. He's not an offensive threat by any means. Like, he's only hitting about 200 this year. But he's by far the better defensive option behind the plate. Hudson Polk is the other guy. He had a pass ball that let a run score against Georgia, and they took advantage of him not being as good throwing out runners. Georgia stole their second base in SEC play against Arkansas, so that had an impact. And then I feel like there was another one that's maybe worth noting is Peyton Stovall. I guess has been dealing with a little lingering arm soreness. Got the rest. Didn't start on Tuesday. Dave Van Horn doesn't seem too concerned about it. He's going to be in the lineup this weekend. But that may be a contributing factor to him not having the sophomore year we maybe thought he would have. So, I mean, it's like a long list. I mean, literally, the lineup on Tuesday against Missouri State featured, of the 9 guys, only 2 of them were regular starters in their normal spots. I mean, you had Brady Slavens playing left field. He's your first baseman. You had a backup second baseman in there, backup catcher. You had a freshman at DH. Your right fielder, as he's been for the last couple of weeks, was your starting designated hitter, who is a converted infielder. Your center fielder is who had been playing left before Josenberger went down, and before that he's playing right field before Wegner went down. So he's gone from left to right to now center, and so it's just a hodgepodge of guys that Dave Van Horn's kind of thrown together and is experimenting what works and what doesn't work.
All right, I'm trying to keep unofficial count here. I'm not sure I could write quickly enough, but because there were so many. But okay, so that's your number 1 starter, never threw a pitch. Frank would have been a starter or a long man out of the pen.
Yeah, top middle reliever, top long reliever.
Yeah. Guy would have thrown a lot of innings. Tygart's your closer. He's played some, but not all. Probably missed. I think he's been out more than he's been in. Right?
Yes. Yeah. He's been out since early March.
I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but Josenberger, Wegner, and Stovall, maybe they're top 3 hitters.
Yeah, I mean, Borfin is probably your top. Yeah, he's in there. Yeah. But I mean, that's your top. I mean, honestly, between Borfin, Wegner, and Josenberger, your starting outfield, two of those guys are out, and those are probably, in my opinion, your 3 top hitters, because Stovall's kind of struggled this year. Maybe that's related to injury. I don't know, but yeah, it's and maybe you could throw Kendall Diggs in there as well. But I think those 3 are your top guys, and 2 of them now are out, and you're not 100% sure when they're going to be back.
Yeah, Wegner was incredibly productive when he was in there. He's probably a top 10 hitter in the league on production when he was healthy. But yeah, I mean, here's what I want to know: how do you tear a lat? I don't think I could do that if I tried.
I don't know. It was weird. I mean, he threw a pitch and he immediately grabbed, and we're like, oh gosh, what's going on? Because at this point, we'd already seen Wiggins and I think Tygart had already been hurt, and the trainer came out there and like, well, let's throw a warm up pitch just to see kind of how it goes. He threw a pitch and immediately kind of doubled over in pain. So I don't know how it happens, but that's just Arkansas's luck. I mean, I know we're talking baseball, but you could say the same thing about the football season with Jalen Catalon and KJ Jefferson having injuries. You could say the same thing about the basketball season with Trevin Brazile and Nick Smith Jr. I mean, it's all 3 major sports this year have been just ravaged by not just injuries, but significant injuries to key guys, and it's carried over to baseball, unfortunately.
And yet, and let me give you some metrics here, and some of these would be a little bit outdated because there's been a midweek loss since yesterday. And I had these numbers a couple days ago. Arkansas was top 10 in most of the computers I looked at. Was 5 in the RPI. That probably dropped a little bit after yesterday. I guess 30 and 11 now. Number 11 strength of schedule heading into yesterday. Man, I mean, you look at the wins: LSU, Oklahoma State, Texas, single wins there, 2 or 3 against Alabama, sweeping Tennessee, sweeping Auburn at home. I mean, this is still a top 8 seed in the tournament as of today. I did my brackets. They're not brackets really, but I did my projections, just kind of lining teams up. I had Arkansas at 7. But I think I dinged them a little bit just because of injuries going forward. Going well, I don't know how this is a hold up, but I mean, you could even argue that like if you just do it on production, I could probably put Arkansas as high as 5. This team is right there, Andrew. If it could just get enough done between now and the end of the regular season to play a lot of baseball in Fayetteville, and frankly, didn't play it in Fayetteville a year ago, and it didn't matter. Got to Omaha anyway, and nearly took one home.
Yeah, I mean they to be in the position they're in right now is incredible. I am very skeptical. Maybe it's just the fact that I've covered Arkansas for so long and I've come to expect the worst. But with these injuries, I could totally see them slipping a little bit. But yeah, if the season ended today, I think you could, as you said, put them as high as number 5, definitely top 8. You know, and at that point, you're hosting a regional and presumably a super regional, assuming you win the regional. You'd be in a really good spot. Are they going to be able to maintain that over the next 4 weeks? I'm not sure. I mean, you got Texas A&M at home this weekend. It's a manageable series. You know, I know A&M's playing better of late, but I mean, that's a manageable series. You got Mississippi State on the road, another manageable series, and then you end with just the gauntlet of South Carolina at home and then at Vandy. That's a brutal end. So you really got to take care of business these next 2 weeks. And unfortunately, I don't know if you're going to have two of your top hitters available. But it does sound like maybe you're going to get Brady Tygart back this weekend, so that's a plus on the mound, but a couple of minuses in the lineup.
Yeah, to me, if Arkansas can somehow get to 600 or to 500, the rest of the way, go 6-6 in those games. To me, that's a team that should host at least one weekend, if not two. And if I'm the committee, I'm going, hey, wait a minute. These guys did this without those guys. You got to bump them up another notch. And I think the RPI is going to be in range at that point because Vandy, South Carolina, I mean, those are two, top 8 RPI teams. Carolina's one. I mean, that alone, if Arkansas could just somehow find a way to tread water between now and then, you would think things start turning in its favor.
I think so, especially if it becomes very clear that your guys are going to be back. I think that the selection committee has to weigh that. I mean, we hear that all the time with the NCAA basketball tournament. So hopefully, it's a thing that's factored in baseball as well, because it's going to come into play for Arkansas. And I think if they could finish 500 from here on out in SEC play, I think Van Horn would be thrilled with that. I mean, we talked to him after the Missouri State loss in Springfield, and he said something along the lines of, "Man, we just got to get by. We just got to get through this until we get guys back. We got to find a way to win some games." And if they can do that, even if it's not super sexy, if you're not blowing teams out, or if it's a struggle and you're not, some Arkansas fans think that if you don't sweep a team, it's bad. But sweeps are hard to come by in the SEC. If you can just win, I mean, to me, the path is win 2 out of 3 against A&M, 2 of 3 at Mississippi State, and then just try to win one game each against South Carolina and Vanderbilt. That gets you 6 wins. That gets you to 17 wins in the SEC, and I think that definitely is 100% a host, a top 16, and it may, as you said, with the injuries factored in, with the RPI where it is, it may be enough to be a top 8, and then once you're there and you get guys back, then hey, maybe they can make a run.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves about college baseball is this emphasis on did you win the series? Well, I mean, there's a third game in there too. There's a big difference between going 2-1 and 3-0, or 1-2 and 0-3. And I think those things add up. And I'm looking at that, and I think that's the way Arkansas is going to have to do it. I look and I say, most realistic path to get there: 2-3 against A&M, 2-3 at State, and then try to get one out of each of Vanderbilt or South Carolina, or take a series there if you go 0-for in the other one. So let's start with A&M this weekend. The Aggies go to Lexington and beat a really good Kentucky team. What are your thoughts on how those teams match up?
Yeah, I mean, A&M's playing really well of late. I know they did just lose to Sam Houston on the midweek, but I mean, who didn't lose this week? But they've won four
The ones that
straight.
didn't play.
Yeah, exactly. I think they've won 4 straight SEC series now, so they're playing really well of late. I think they're 500 in SEC play, I want to say, so they're a solid team, and we know that they were, early in the year, especially, like, they were top 25 caliber team, and so it's a tough series. Arkansas, we don't know what the rotation is going to look like beyond Hunter Holland starting game one. Dave Van Horn has done that the last several weeks now, where he's gone Hunter Holland, TBA, TBA. I feel very confident that one of those TBAs is going to be Brady Tygart. That may be interesting to people because Brady Tygart has never started a game for Arkansas. He's a All-American type closer. But if those who have listened to Dave Van Horn the last several years, they know that he really believes Brady Tygart is a future starter. And this may be the excuse he finally gets to use him as a starter because he has the stuff. He has a versatile pitch arsenal. So it's not like he's just a two-pitch guy. He can throw multiple things. He presumably can work longer into games. Now, I don't know what they would do this week. They probably will have him on a pitch count. Maybe you get just a couple innings out of him, but that's still a couple innings you didn't have before. Build him up, and if you can get that, then Hagen Smith has been kind of the wild card, a guy that they like to use out of the bullpen if they have a chance to win a game, because Dave Van Horn really, when he has a chance to win, he wants to win it. I bet he really wishes he had Hagen Smith come out of the bullpen to finish the game off in Game 3 against Georgia, but he didn't. And so you got him. I mean, you could conceivably, if those are your three starters, have one of the more talented rotations in the SEC. But again, it requires a lot of things kind of falling into place. But this weekend against A&M would be kind of our first kind of trial run to see what it looks like. But I do think it's a series that Arkansas can, and dare I say should, win. Although with the injuries, I'm not 100% confident. They are struggling, 4-game losing streak and all. But this just seems like, in my years of covering Arkansas, when Arkansas has a stretch like this, they usually bounce back strong. And with it being at Baum-Walker Stadium in Fayetteville, I think it's going to be some good crowds and everything. I see this being a weekend where Arkansas bounces back, but the injuries are the wild card, the great unknown.
All right, let's fast forward a little bit to first week in a regional play, wherever Arkansas is, whoever it's facing. Of the guys that Arkansas was counting on before the season, Wiggins isn't going to be there, but is everybody else back?
Yeah, I think Wiggins and Coty Frank, that middle reliever, I think both of them are going to be out. I think the hope is, Wegner should be back. They think he might be back for the South Carolina series, which is the next to last regular season series, but definitely for the Vandy series to end the regular season. So he should be back. And just Tavian Josenberger, it's a hamstring, and they don't really know exactly how long it's going to keep him out. They got to be really careful with that. Yeah, and you don't want to tweak it again, because if you tweak it again, then all of a sudden you're looking at him being done for the year. It's a little bit unknown, but I think everybody else should be healthy and ready to go for regionals. And if that's the case, then they're a dangerous team.
No doubt. And found out last year, everybody was kind of sleeping on Arkansas, and they went and had an epic series in Stillwater. I remember watching that. That was some crazy stuff that went on. And frankly, I thought of the 4 teams remaining in Omaha might have been the best, but baseball goes funny ways sometimes, and it wasn't in the cards. But I have a feeling it's going to be one day. Hutch, thank you for joining us. Tell folks about your coverage and where they can find it.
Yeah, so I'm at bestofarkansassports.com. We're a free website, so you don't have to worry about any paywalls or anything. If you want a look at Arkansas baseball, I feel like I do just about as good as anybody. I write a lot. So if you want anything to do with Arkansas baseball or Arkansas basketball, Arkansas football, head over to Best of Arkansas Sports. And also you can always follow me at NWA Hutch on Twitter, covering all the games there as well. So you can find it, and I like to tell people, emphasize this: it's all free, so you don't have to worry about subscribing, paying anything to see it.
And 3 weeks from now, you and I are hanging out at Hawkins Field, right, in Nashville.
I wish I could be making that trip.
No,
unfortunately, so my wife and I are expecting baby number 2 in July. And we're doing a baby shower that weekend.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately am not going to be able to make that trip.
Well, that's too bad. It's going to happen at some point. I can't make it to Hoover this year for family stuff too. But you and I are going to hang out at some point, and I can't wait. And can't wait to have you on again. I know we will we'll probably have you on for the Vandy series, if not the South Carolina series, because it's just been such a fascinating season. You're a great guest. Hutch, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you soon.
No problem. Anytime.
All right, I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris. Thanks for watching. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, and that is cost nothing, it's free, but it's like a follow. That'll get you notifications if you enable those. It'll get you all our content. We're doing a ton of SEC stuff. Arkansas fans, you may want to watch our bracketology video I did on Tuesday, breaking down where the Hogs stand. Anyway, I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again soon.